The wind swept across the prairie like a long sigh, rattling the windows of Bo Calder's ranch house and carrying with it the faint cry of loneliness he'd long tried to silence. He was a man carved out of the land, stoic, weather-worn, and quiet. The solitude didn't used to bother him. For years it was just Bo, his horses, and the land stretching wide and unforgiving around him. But seasons changed, and so did hearts. At 33, Bo wasn't chasing dreams anymore. He just wanted a warm voice in the mornings, someone to share the weight of the days. So when he spotted the advertisement in a crumpled newspaper handed to him in town, mail-order brides, companionship for the brave-hearted, he tore it out, folded it twice, and mailed a letter that same afternoon. He didn't ask for much in his letter. No lace, no frills. Just a woman with grit, honesty, and enough strength to handle a life where comforts were few, but loyalty meant everything. Weeks passed. Then one dry Tuesday, the old stagecoach wagon finally rolled into Deadwood. Dust trailed behind it like a tail of smoke. The townsfolk paused, some out of curiosity, others out of habit. Anything new in Deadwood drew attention. Bo stood near the general store, arms folded, hat low over his brow. He watched as the wagon creaked to a stop. His heart thumped once, maybe twice. He half expected a nervous-looking woman in a bonnet and pressed dress to step down, maybe clutching a handkerchief. But that wasn't what he got. Boots hit the ground first. Then a long duster coat flapped in the wind as a tall, red-haired woman stepped down, gripping a worn rifle slung across her back. Her pants were dusty, her boots scarred, and her expression unreadable. But her eyes, they were the color of storm clouds just before lightning. She spotted him immediately and strolled over like she owned the street. "You Bo Calder?" she asked, cocking her head. He nodded slowly, eyes narrowing. "I am," she extended a calloused hand. "Name's Josie. Josie Vale." He didn't take her hand. "You're not the woman in the photo." She gave a crooked smile, but her eyes never softened. "Nope, she ain't coming." Bo stiffened. "Why not?" Josie glanced over her shoulder, as if watching for shadows. "Let's just say Annie Mae Holloway had a change of heart about frontier life. Lucky for you, I was at the station when her letter showed up, and I needed a ride north. Figured this could be a mutually beneficial arrangement." Bo frowned. "You pretending to be her?" Josie shrugged. "Call it surviving." Bo stepped back. "I asked for an honest woman." Josie's eyes flashed. "And I told you the truth the minute I stepped off that wagon." Before Bo could respond, the sharp crack of gunfire echoed through the hills. Heads turned. Horses neighed. The sound came from the southern ridge, close. Josie's hand was already on her revolver. "Well, hell," she muttered, eyes scanning the street. "They found me faster than I expected." Bo looked at her sharply. "Who?" "Men with badges," she said. "And worse, men without 'em." Josie grabbed Bo by the arm and yanked him behind a water trough as a second shot rang out. Closer this time. Her movements were precise, practiced. This wasn't her first time dodging bullets. "You brought heat to my doorstep?" Bo growled. "I didn't plan it," she hissed. "But you're the one who wanted a woman with grit, right?" "Here I am, another shot." A window shattered across the street. Panic rippled through the townsfolk. The sheriff would be here soon, but that might be just as bad for Josie. Bo took a breath and studied her. Her hands were steady, her jaw set. Whoever she wasn't just an outlaw on the run. There was something buried behind her eyes. Something tired, and maybe even afraid. "Get inside," he finally muttered. She blinked. "What?" He nodded toward his horse hitched nearby. "Go around back. I'll follow. If you're bringing trouble to my door, we'll face it there. But you're going to tell me everything. No more surprises." She looked at him, really looked at him, and gave a slow, solemn nod. "Fair enough, cowboy." Bo watched her disappear around the side of the store, then tipped his hat lower. He'd wanted a simple woman. Instead, fate had delivered a flame with a trigger finger and a whole lot of danger chasing her. And oddly enough, Bo wasn't sure he minded. The prairie sun was beginning to sink behind the distant buttes by the time Bo and Josie reached the ranch. The ride was silent. save for the creak of leather and the soft snort of Beau's old gelding. Josie rode behind him on a borrowed mare, quiet and watchful, one hand always near the pistol strapped to her hip. She didn't look like a bride. She looked like trouble wearing dusty boots and a half-worn smirk. Beau didn't speak. He was chewing over too many questions, each one heavier than the last. Who was this woman? Why had she taken the place of Annie Mae? And why in God's name was someone shooting at her? When they reached the ranch house, a sturdy two-story structure built with his own hands, Josie let out a low whistle. "You built all this yourself?" He didn't answer. He just dismounted and tied off the horse. "You're lucky that bullet didn't come closer," he finally muttered. "Would have been a short stay." Josie swung off the mare like she'd been riding since birth. "I ain't planning to stay long," she said. "Just need a few days to catch my breath, get a read on the land. Then I'm gone." Beau raised an eyebrow. "You think I'm hiding a fugitive in my home so you can just catch your breath?" Josie shrugged and followed him up the porch steps. "I think you're lonely enough to make strange decisions." "Same reason you sent that letter." The jab stung more than Beau expected. She wasn't wrong. He shoved open the door and stepped inside. The house smelled like cedar and saddle oil, with a faint trace of tobacco and old wood smoke. It was tidy but bare, like the life he lived, functional, quiet, solitary. Josie stepped inside and looked around. "No pictures. No family?" "None alive," he said. She paused at the hearth, brushing her fingers over the mantel where a single horseshoe hung, polished and rusted with age. "You ever been married before?" "No," she nodded. "Me neither." There was silence for a moment, heavy as a thundercloud. Josie moved to the window and parted the curtains slightly, watching the horizon. "They're not going to stop looking for me," she said quietly. Beau sat down at the table, arms crossed. "You said you stole something. What was it?" She looked over her shoulder. "Freedom," he frowned. "That ain't an answer." She turned fully. "I used to ride with a crew, my brothers, actually. Milo Vale, name ring a bell?" Beau's stomach tightened. Everyone in Deadwood had heard of Milo Vale. Bank robber, train thief, murderer. A bounty big enough to buy a saloon outright sat on his head. "And you were part of his gang?" "Not by choice," she said. "He raised me after our parents died. Took me in, gave me a place. Then he started using me as a decoy. Pretty face, loaded rifle. Got us into a lot of places." Beau was quiet, trying to decide if he believed her. She didn't seem like a liar, but that was the thing about liars. The good ones never did. She walked toward him and sat across the table. Her eyes were softer now, a little tired. "I left them 2 months ago. Took half the gold from a train job, rode as far as I could. Changed my name, tried to disappear. And the real bride? She was on that coach," Josie said quietly. "But when I found out the route led straight through a spot Milo liked to hit, I knew she wouldn't make it. I intercepted the driver. Paid him to leave me instead." "So Annie Mae is alive?" Beau asked. Josie nodded. "Last I saw her, she was headed to Wyoming with a different family. She's safe." He studied her for a long time. "You expect me to trust you?" "No," she said. "But I'm asking you to understand. I didn't come here to ruin your life. I came here to save mine." Another pause. The light from the window stretched across the table between them like a golden bridge no one wanted to cross. "Just one night," Beau said finally. Josie smiled faintly. "One's all I need." But as the sun set and darkness crept across the land, both of them knew something had shifted. Neither one of them had asked for this. But fate had a cruel sense of humor, and tomorrow always came too fast in the West. The morning sun hadn't yet burned off the chill when Sheriff Briggs rode up the dusty trail to Beau Calder's ranch. His arrival was slow, deliberate, the kind of approach lawmen took when they carried news that would change things. Beau was outside splitting wood, sweat on his brow despite the cold, and Josie was inside cleaning her gun in silence. "Morning, Beau," the sheriff called out as he dismounted. He was a broad-shouldered man with a mustache thick as winter brush and a squint that rarely softened. "Sheriff," Beau said, nodding. "Something on your mind?" Briggs removed his hat and held out a weathered envelope. "Got a letter from the fort. Thought you ought to see it." Beau wiped his hands on a rag and took the letter. The paper trembled slightly in his hand as he read. Josie stepped onto the porch, wiping oil from her fingers. "What's going on?" she asked. Bo looked up, face pale. He handed her the letter. Josie read it fast. Her eyes froze halfway down the page. The stage from Billings to Deadwood was ambushed 2 days before arrival. Wagon overturned. Several passengers dead. Among them, a woman matching the description of Annie Mae Whitlock, the mail-order bride bound for one Bo Calder of Deadwood. Josie's hands curled around the letter like it might bite. "Damn it," she muttered. Sheriff Briggs eyed her carefully. "So, if that woman died on the road, who the hell are you?" Josie met his gaze. "I never claimed to be Annie Mae. I told Bo the truth the second I stepped off that wagon." Bo stepped forward, his voice rough. "You knew about this?" "No," she said firmly. "But I know who did it." The wind paused, like even the land was waiting. Josie's voice was low, haunted. "That ambush wasn't for Annie Mae. It was for me. Milo, my brother. He knew I was heading west. He's ruthless, but he ain't stupid. If he thought I was hiding among passengers, he'd take down the whole damn wagon just to be sure." Bo's fists clenched. "You dragged death here, Josie. That woman's blood is on his hands," Josie snapped, stepping forward. "Not mine." Her voice cracked. "I left that life behind. I'm trying to make something new, but he doesn't let go." Bo turned away, fists shaking. "You should have told me from the start." "I did," she said quietly. "Maybe not all of it, but enough." "You just didn't want to hear it." Sheriff Briggs crossed his arms. "I'll ride out and notify the marshal. The girl in that grave deserves her name back." He mounted his horse, nodding once at Bo. "You be careful. This woman brings storms." When he was gone, the silence between Josie and Bo was heavier than gunmetal. Josie turned to head back inside, but Bo didn't follow. He stayed rooted, the letter in his hand like a weight that wouldn't lift. Later that afternoon, the tension hadn't lifted. Bo was tending to the horses near the barn when he heard Josie's sharp voice behind him. "Bo, don't move!" He froze. A second later, he heard the unmistakable hiss and the rattle. Snake. Before he could even glance down, Josie had drawn her knife and lunged. In a blur, she grabbed his shoulder, shoved him aside, and slashed the rattlesnake's neck clean through. But not before it struck her ankle. She fell to the dirt, pale already. Bo dropped beside her, eyes wide with panic. "Why the hell would you—" "I owed you," she said through gritted teeth, "for not shooting me when you should have." He scooped her up and carried her inside. She was light but burning up. The bite had broken skin and venom was already working its way up. Bo worked fast, tying off the leg and drawing out what he could with a knife and whiskey. Josie bit down on a leather strap and bore the pain in silence. When it was done, she collapsed against him, fevered and shaking. Bo held her long after she fell asleep. He looked at her, this wild, dangerous woman who had never asked for anything but a chance. And something shifted in him. She might have brought a storm. But she also took a bite meant for him, and that kind of loyalty, that was harder to come by than love. The venom slowed, but it didn't stop. Josie lay on Bo's worn leather couch, her face pale, eyes glazed with fever. Bo sat beside her through the night, soaking cloths in cool water and pressing them to her forehead, cursing every moment he wasn't fast enough to stop the bite. Morning light crept through the cracks in the shutters like hesitant fingers, but the peace it brought was uneasy. Bo had fought coyotes, prairie fires, and winter blizzards, but nothing unnerved him like watching Josie tremble and mutter in her fever dreams. She whispered names. One of them stuck, Milo. Bo's jaw tightened. The name was no stranger now. Josie had mentioned her brother, the man who'd chased her across half the country, the man who would kill to keep the past buried. He stepped outside, boots crunching dry earth, and spotted Sheriff Briggs riding back fast. Too fast for a casual visit. "Bo!" the sheriff shouted, reins jerking hard as his horse skidded to a stop. "Trouble's coming." Bo's stomach sank. "How bad?" Briggs pulled a folded telegram from his coat. "A bounty hunter rode in from the South Trail this morning. Claims Josie Rivers is wanted in 3 states, armed robbery, train holdup, and desertion from the gang of Milo Rivers. Your bride might be more fire than you bargained for." Bo didn't flinch. "She's not my bride," Could have fooled me, Briggs muttered. Man watches over a woman like that. Makes a man think twice about who's protecting who. Bo glanced toward the cabin. She saved my life yesterday. Took a rattler's bite for me. That's worth more than a bounty. Briggs nodded, tone softening. All I'm saying is Milo ain't far. Bounty Hunter said he was 2 days behind Josie when she hit Deadwood. Might even be in the hills already. You need to decide what you're going to do when he shows up. Bo didn't hesitate. I protect what's mine. The sheriff gave a thin smile. Figured you'd say that, just... Be careful, Bo. That girl's walking with a trail of ghosts. Back in the cabin, Josie stirred. Her voice was hoarse, lips cracked. Water, she whispered. Bo helped her sip from the canteen. She winced, but her eyes cleared slightly. How long? She asked. A day, he said. You fought the bite hard. I thought I'd lose you. She chuckled faintly. Won't go that easy. Then she groaned, hand to her head. He's coming, isn't he? Bo nodded. The sheriff says your brother might already be nearby. Josie sat up slowly, fire returning to her gaze. Then we don't have much time. Bo studied her. Why did you run, Josie? What did Milo do that scared you enough to pretend to be someone else? She looked down, her fingers twisting the blanket. He wasn't always a monster. He used to protect me. After Ma and Pa died, it was just us. Then the gang found him. He changed. Started taking what he wanted, burning towns, hurting people. When I tried to leave, he said if he couldn't own me, no one could. Bo's voice was tight. So he killed your parents? No, she whispered. But he let the fire spread. He could have pulled Ma out. He just watched. Bo stood abruptly, rage clouding his face. If he steps foot on my land, he won't walk back off it. Josie looked up at him. That's why I came. I needed someone who didn't scare easy. Someone who'd stand his ground. You thought I'd marry you out of duty? No, she said softly. I thought you might believe in second chances. Bo paused. I don't know what I believe anymore. But I know I won't let him hurt you. A loud whistle echoed across the ridge. Josie froze. Her breath caught. That's him, she whispered. That's Milo's signal. He's here. Bo reached for his rifle, eyes steeled. Then let's give him a welcome Deadwood won't forget. Outside, the wind picked up. Dust swirled around the ranch as hoofbeats rumbled in the distance. Blood had been spilled. Ghosts had returned, but Bo Calder was ready, and this time he wasn't alone. The wind howled low as if the land itself held its breath. The sun sagged against the horizon, bleeding red across the Montana sky. Bo Calder stood at the edge of his ranch house porch, rifle in hand, eyes locked on the approaching figures. Dust kicked up behind them like a warning. 4 riders, but only one mattered. Josie stood behind Bo, clutching the doorframe for balance, still pale from the snakebite, but standing. She knew that silhouette. The man leading the riders wore a black hat pulled low, his shoulders broad and proud, his presence sharp as a blade. Milo Rivers, her brother. Her blood. Her curse. Bo turned to her. You're sure it's him? Josie nodded once. He rides like he owns the world. Bo cocked his rifle. Then it's time someone told him he don't. As the riders approached, the tension twisted in Josie's gut like a coiled rope. Bo moved with purpose, laying extra rounds by the windows, checking his revolver, positioning himself at the gate, but he wasn't the only one preparing. Josie pulled the hidden derringer from under the floorboard. It was small, 2-barreled, but close enough. It would end a man's life just the same. When the hooves finally stopped just beyond the gate, the lead rider dismounted first. Milo didn't draw his weapon, not yet. He stood tall, smug, his jacket dusted from travel, his dark beard neatly trimmed. The devil wore a gentleman's smile. Well, I'll be damned, he said, voice calm but snake-slick. Little Josie playing house. Bo stepped forward, keeping himself between them. She's not playing anything. She's under my roof now, Milo chuckled. You her new pet? Or her next mistake? Bo didn't flinch. Say your piece or ride on. Milo's expression soured. My piece? That woman stole from me. My gang, my maps, my silver. He looked at Josie. And my name. Josie stepped forward. You lost the right to that name the day you left our mother in a burning cabin? Milo's jaw ticked. "That wasn't my doing. But you didn't stop it," she spat. "And when I tried to run, you threatened to bury me beside her." His eyes flicked toward Bo. "So now you run to cowboys? This one doesn't know what kind of poison you carry." "She's more honest than you'll ever be," Bo said sharply. "And I don't take kindly to men who hunt women like animals." Milo's smirk vanished. He turned to his men. "Burn it." The words hit like thunder. One of the gang members reached into his saddlebag, pulling a bottle of kerosene. Another lit a match. Bo raised his rifle. Crack! The man holding the bottle fell backward off his horse with a howl, the glass shattering beneath him. Fire crawling up his pant leg. Josie ducked as gunfire erupted. The next 30 seconds were chaos. Shouting, smoke, dust, hooves screaming against the dirt. Bo fired like thunder. Josie crouched at the window, taking one of Milo's men square in the shoulder with her derringer. The man toppled like a sack of wheat. Only 2 remained standing when the smoke cleared. Milo, crouched behind a fence post, and a younger outlaw bleeding from the thigh, hobbling toward his horse. Bo moved in fast, flanking left. Josie came from the right. "Milo!" she shouted. "It ends here!" Milo stood slowly, dropping his gun in the dirt. "You wouldn't shoot me." "I already did," she said coldly. "You just haven't noticed the scar yet." He looked at her, his eyes full of something Bo couldn't read. Maybe pride, maybe fury, maybe regret. "You're not the little girl anymore," Milo said. "No," Josie said. "And you're not my brother." A single shot rang out, Josie's last bullet grazing Milo's shoulder. He stumbled backward. And before Bo could fire, the outlaw had mounted his horse and was galloping toward the hills, wounded and howling like a ghost set loose. Silence settled heavy after that. Josie leaned against the porch, exhaling hard. Bo walked over, brushing a hand down her back. "You all right?" She looked up at him, trembling. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life." Bo nodded. "Good. Because now, I reckon it's time we figure out what comes next." And as the last of the sun dipped below the hills, Josie took Bo's hand, not as a fugitive, not as a stranger, but as a woman who'd survived hell and finally found a man worth fighting for. Weeks had passed since the final showdown with Milo's gang, and the sun had risen and set over the Montana plains more times than Bo Calder could count. The scars left behind, both seen and unseen, were slowly healing. The ranch, once battered and broken, was beginning to look like home again. The wind no longer carried the whispers of danger, but instead hummed softly through the grass as if promising a fresh start. Josie, now Jo, had changed too. The wild flame of red hair she once wore like a banner was now cropped short, tucked beneath a wide-brimmed hat pulled low over her eyes. The hat shadowed her face but couldn't hide the fierce determination in her gaze. Jo no longer carried the weight of a hunted outlaw on her shoulders. She was becoming someone new, someone free. She moved around the ranch with confident strides, her hands calloused from the work she once thought she'd never do. Fixing fences, tending to the horses, stacking wood, these were no longer chores, but acts of reclaiming her life. Bo watched her from a distance sometimes, feeling a mix of admiration and something tender stirring deep inside his chest. "Jo," he called one late afternoon, as she leaned against the corral gate, her silhouette framed by the golden light of the setting sun. She tipped her hat and smirked. "Yeah? Dinner's ready. Come eat before it gets cold." She smiled back, the ghost of that mischievous smirk that had first drawn him to her. "On my way." Their days had settled into a rhythm, simple, honest, and real. No longer were they just a man and a woman thrown together by circumstance. They were partners, companions who had fought to earn each other's trust, maybe even something more, though neither was quite ready to say it out loud yet. Then came the day Sheriff Briggs returned. Bo spotted the familiar dust cloud on the horizon, stirring up memories of earlier confrontations and narrow escapes. But this time, Briggs rode in slow and steady, not with a posse but alone, his expression unreadable beneath the brim of his hat. Jo was the first to meet him at the gate, hand resting lightly on the butt of her revolver. The sheriff raised a hand in a gesture of peace. "Miss Jo," he began, his voice gravelly but calm. "I'm not here to arrest you." Joe's eyes narrowed, suspicion flashing bright. "Then why've you come?" Briggs pulled a folded piece of paper from his pocket, a warrant, but not for Joe. "There's a new target in town. Milo's back, and this time he's more dangerous than ever. We need your help." Joe exchanged a glance with Bo. The offer wasn't simple, but it was clear. Work with the law, help bring down the man who had haunted her past, and in return, she'd earn a clean slate. "No more running. No more hiding." Bo stepped forward, his voice low but firm. "What do you say, Joe? Time to close this chapter for good?" Joe looked out over the fields, the place they'd begun to call home. The promise of peace tugged at her heart. The chance for a new name, a new life, one without fear or shadows. She took a deep breath, then nodded. "All right, Sheriff. Let's finish this." That night, as they prepared to ride out, Joe stood beside Bo beneath a sky dusted with stars. The quiet between them was comfortable, charged with unspoken words. Bo leaned closer, his voice barely above a whisper. "Maybe I didn't get the bride I ordered." Joe turned to him, her eyes softening. "But I got the one I needed." A smile tugged at the corner of Joe's mouth. "And maybe the outlaw you never expected." Side by side, they rode into the fading light, two souls forged by fire and hardship, riding toward an uncertain future with courage and hope. The road ahead was still dangerous, filled with ghosts and gunfire, but Joe and Bo faced it together. No longer alone, no longer fugitives from their pasts, but partners bound by a promise and a growing love. As the stars blinked awake overhead, the prairie whispered a new story, one of redemption, resilience, and the kind of love that can tame even the wildest hearts. And somewhere on the wind, carried softly between the rustling grass and the distant howl of coyotes, was a quiet vow. This was their home, their life, their chance at something better together.